Hello, viewers. Hello, students. You're welcome to a brand new lesson, a brand new video. This is English with Dexter, and I am Dexter, your instructor. Today, our topic will be the auxiliary verb do. The auxiliary verb do. Now, recall that in our previous lesson, we looked at the primary auxiliary verb be. We mentioned that there are three primary auxiliary verbs in English, and they are be, have, and do. And in our previous lesson, we looked at the verb be. And if you missed that lesson, I am going to leave a link in the description below so that you can watch the video on the lesson with the auxiliary verb be. But today, we shall be looking at the second primary auxiliary verb in English, which is do. But if it's your first time on my channel, please subscribe and also like and share my videos. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell to be the first to be notified anytime I upload a brand new video. So without further ado, we shall be looking at the primary auxiliary verb do in today's lesson. So we shall be looking at the situations that we can use the verb do as an auxiliary verb. What are those circumstances that we can use this verb in English language? So the auxiliary verb do can be used to. The first one is make a verb more emphatic. So we can use the auxiliary verb do to make a verb more emphatic, to emphasize a main verb. Don't forget the verb do as an auxiliary verb is a helping verb. That is, it helps the main verb. So the first way it can help a main verb is by making that main verb more emphatic. And we're going to look at some examples to explain that shortly. The second circumstance where we can use the auxiliary verb do is to form a question as a question form. And then the third situation where we can use the auxiliary verb do is to make a negative sentence. That's by using do not. By using do not to make a negative sentence. So these are the three situations where we can use the auxiliary verb do. To make a verb more emphatic, to form a question, or to make a negative sentence. But it is important to know that there are three forms of the auxiliary verb do. There are three forms of the auxiliary verb do. Recall that for the verb be, there were 8 forms. And if you watch the lesson on the verb be, there are 8 forms. Now for the verb do, there are 3 forms, and they are do as the base form, does, and did. So do, does, and did are the 3 forms of the auxiliary verb do. So we're going to see how these 3 forms can be used in the situations that we mentioned earlier. That is making the verb more emphatic, forming a question, and also making a negative sentence. So let's begin. Now we'll start with the emphatic form. How can we make a verb more emphatic? How can we make a main verb more emphatic? By using the primary auxiliary verb do. Well, here we say we can use all the forms of the auxiliary verb do to accentuate a main verb. That is to make that main verb more emphatic. So when we accentuate a main verb, is to make it stronger, make it more pronounced, okay, to emphasize that main verb. So we can use any of the forms, whether they do, does, or the did, to accentuate a main verb. And that is why we call it the emphatic form. So let's look at some examples. Now, the first one we have here is I, we, you, they, any of them, do eat fruits. Now, this is the auxiliary verb do, and this is the main verb eat. Now, this do is emphasizing or accentuating the main verb eat. Because you can say, I eat fruits. You can say, we eat fruits. You can say, you eat fruits. Or you can say, they eat fruits. It's okay. But when you want to emphasize this verb, when you want to accentuate this verb, when you want to make this verb more pronounced, then you use the primary auxiliary verb do to emphasize this main verb and make it more pronounced. And so you say, I do eat fruits. Now you're emphasizing. Okay? Or we do eat fruits. Now you're emphasizing. Or you do eat fruits. Now you're emphasizing. Or they do eat fruits. Now you're emphasizing. Okay? Let's take another example. Okay? She, he, or it does drink wine. Okay? So, this is another form of the verb do, as does, and it's accentuating or emphasizing the main verb here, drink. Because you can say, she drinks wine, you can say he drinks wine, you can say it drinks wine. But when you use does here as an auxiliary verb, you are emphasizing the main verb drink. So she does drink wine, or he does drink wine, or it does drink wine. And so does here is playing an emphatic role in this sentence. Another example we have here, I, we, she did eat the food. So you can say, I ate the food, or we ate the food, or she ate the food, etc. But the auxiliary verb here, this form here, did, is emphasizing this main verb. It is accentuating or making this main verb more pronounced. So I did eat the food, or we did eat the food, or she did eat the food. Okay, so that is the first example. It shows that the auxiliary verb do can accentuate a main verb. Okay, when it comes before the main verb, it's just to emphasize. You can omit this verb here, but it's coming here to accentuate or to make this main verb more pronounced. So that's the function, that's the first function of the primary auxiliary verb do. Now let's go to the second function of this verb. Now the second function is the question form, okay? To form a question. Now, we can use all the forms of the auxiliary verb do to make a question. As you can see, we use do or does for the present simple tense and did for the past simple tense. Okay? So when we use do or does, it's for the present simple tense. Okay? Present tense. And we use did for the past simple tense. So we can use them to form questions. Okay, let's look at some examples right now. The first example here, first one we have, do you or I or they or we eat yam? Okay, so it could be, do you eat yam? Or do I eat yam? Or do they eat yam? Okay, so when the subject is singular, sorry, when it's plural, when the subject is plural, like they, like we, it can take do as the auxiliary verb, except you and I. These are the only two exceptions that although they might be singular, but they still take the verb do. Otherwise, this verb do goes with plural. They, we, James and John, okay, plural subjects, except you and I. These are the only two exceptions that, although they might be singular, but they will take the verb do. Otherwise, do goes with plural subjects, like they, like we, like James and John, etc. So, do is for what? The simple present tense. Okay? So, this sentence is in the simple present tense form. Do you eat yam? Do I eat yam? Do they eat yam? Or do we eat yam? It's a question form. Okay, so we use the auxiliary verb to form questions. All right, another example. Now, does goes with singular subjects. Okay, so he is singular, she is singular, and it is singular. And that's why we use does here. So we cannot use do he or do she or do it. No, that will be grammatically incorrect. So does goes with singular subjects, but do goes with plural subjects, except you and I. Otherwise, do goes with plural subjects, but does, okay, goes with singular subjects. So does he eat yam? Does she eat yam? Does it eat yam? Does James eat yam? Okay? And these two sentences are in the simple present tense form. Don't forget, do and does goes with simple present tense form. Now, let's go to did. Recall that did is for past tense. Now, did can go with any subject because it's in the past tense. So, did you call the police? You can say, did I call the police? Did she call the police? Yeah, did can go with any subject, whether singular or plural, because it's in the past tense. But did is for past tense, and we can use it to form question. So that is the second function of the auxiliary verb do. It can be used to form questions. All these sentences are questions, and they are formed by the auxiliary verbs do, does, or did. And don't forget that do and does are for simple present tense, while did is for the past tense. And don't forget that do goes with plural subjects, except you and I, while does goes with singular subjects. But did can go with anyone, whether singular or plural, because it's in the past tense. Okay, let's proceed to the next function of the auxiliary verb do. Now, the third function of the auxiliary verb do is the negative form, to form a negative sentence. Now, you know a negative sentence will have the word not. So do not, okay, or does not, as the case may be, or did not, as the case may be. So, this involves the use of not with any of the forms of the verb do. So either do, does, or did not. Yeah. Either do not, does not, or did not. When you use that together, then you're forming the negative form of a sentence. So let's look at some examples. Now, the first one we have here, either I, we, you, or they. Now, don't here is the contracted form for do not. Do not. So, I do not speak French. We do not speak French. You do not speak French. Or they do not speak French. Recall that we said do goes with plural subjects, except I and you. Okay? So, plural subject, James and John do not speak French. Okay? Yes. So, do goes with plural subjects except I and you. That although they might be singular, but they still take do. So, this don't is do not. And that makes these expression negative. So the positive form is I speak French. But when you want to make negative form, you need the auxiliary verb do to come in alongside not to make it negative. And that is another function of the auxiliary verb do. Because without the auxiliary verb do, you cannot make it negative. So you need it, the do, to make it negative. Let's have another example. We have he, she, it does not eat beans. Now, recall that does goes with singular subject. So he, singular, she, singular, it, singular. James does not eat beans, singular. Okay, but do is for plural. Don't forget that. So he does not eat beans, she does not eat beans, it does not eat beans. All these indicate a negative form. Now, the positive form will be he eats beans, or she eats beans, or it eats beans. Now, if you want to make a negative form, you need the auxiliary verb does to make that negative form. Does plus not. Okay? And that is why this verb can be used to make negative expressions. And then we have, for the past tense now, he, she, they, etc. did not go home. Okay? Now, did is for past tense. It can take either singular subjects or a plural subject, but the expression will be in the past tense. So, he did not go home. She did not go home. They did not go home. Now, the positive form will be he went home. She went home. They went home. But when you want to make the negative, you need the auxiliary verb did plus not to accompany the main verb go in order to make the expression negative. And that is another function of the auxiliary verb do. So it is used to form negative expressions. That is either do not, does not, or did not. And so, students, you've learned the three forms of the primary auxiliary verb do, and they are do, does, and did. Recall that do goes with plural subject, while does goes with a singular subject. Do goes with the pronouns I and you alongside plural subject, while does goes with singular subject. And both do and does are used to indicate the simple present tense. But did can take either a singular or plural subject, but is used to indicate a past tense. And the auxiliary verb do, as we've learned, can either be used for emphasis to accentuate the main verb, as we've learned previously. Okay, I do eat rice, or it can be used to form a question. Okay, do you eat rice? Or it can be used to make a negative expression. You do not eat rice. So these are the situations that we require the auxiliary verb do, any form of the auxiliary verb do, to make an expression in English language. And that brings us to the end of today's lesson. And if you enjoyed this lesson, please leave a comment in the comment section below. And if you have questions or you have any topic that you want me to treat on this channel, feel free to notify me in the comment section below, and I'll gladly attend to your requests. Please, once again, if you've not subscribed to this channel, go ahead and do so. And also like this video and share with your friends and loved ones. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell to be notified anytime I upload a brand new video. Thank you for being there, students. Until next time, stay safe and bye-bye.